Okay, thanks for coming. I'm Giuseppe De Simone. I'm a coach and a trainer. I'm an Italian, moved to Sweden. So I'm actually living in Stockholm and, just experienced this. And I'm going to talk to you about one of my passions. I mean, I'm passionate about humanizing workplaces, right? Making them more human. And I decided like a few years back that I'm not going to go to Agile conferences anymore. Because I have the feeling that we as coaches and trainers, we have this risk to be in a bubble and just speak our jargon and really be disconnected by what the real problems are. I decided, I've not spoken at Agile conference for a while. Then I decided explicitly to come back here because it's so awesome conference and it's such a beautiful community here. But so I started to go, for example, to HR conferences. Right? Also to understand what are the problems that these people are facing. I'm going in a couple of weeks to the biggest Nordic space for everything connected to leading people and growing people. And I'm starting also to get an understanding about their challenge. And then culture is a big hype in this moment. In the last year, it's been a big hype, but sometimes in a wrong way. Right? I mean, a term that I heard a lot at the same conference last year was, let's build a vibrant culture. Have you heard about, ever heard about vibrant culture? You should have a vibrant culture. What do you connect this to? I mean, what is one image that gets into your mind if you think about having a vibrant culture?
Wild.
Sorry?
Wild.
Wild. Yeah? What else? Sorry?
Friendly.
Friendly? Diverse?
Chaotic.
Also chaotic? Yeah, but I mean, not everyone, but some people connect vibrant culture to this. So we have some nice table tennis in the space, like so that we can have some fun, right? Having some bean bags so we can all relax and have fun. Or maybe, do a lot of parties, Christmas parties, so we can really glue as a team and so on, right? But actually, this is a kind of a superficial way of thinking about creating a culture where people can perform at their best. I was discussing yesterday with a colleague, Yuka, I don't know if he's here, and he was telling me about stories about company he was working with. During the beginning of COVID, they say, we take care about people. Like people, you remember that, like the beginning of 2020, April, May, everyone was at home, scared, uncertain about the future. We will still have a job. Are we going to connect to each other? And they were only caring to send bags of fruit to people or flip-flops so they could stay comfortable at home, right? Like, how can you be so disconnected with these things? So actually, there's more into the culture because also these celebrations are nice, but then it's a kind of artificial setup, right? You're all enjoying and fun, and then you go back to work, and then it's a totally different thing. So really, like the definition of culture, you can summarize it how we do things around here. And I would like you to discuss with each other, and turn to the person close to you, about telling each other what is one thing that you can observe at your workplace that really is a witness. I mean, this is a proof about how we do things around here. Something that is very, kind of typical of your own company. I can make some example, like you can be something like, okay, whenever we have a meeting and the boss comes in, everyone goes silent. This can be something that you observe. Or we always wear our company t-shirt when meeting customer at sprint review. Or it takes ages to take decision in our company because we always have to listen to everyone's opinion. So, yeah, have you seen this? So I'm going to give you 1 or 2 minutes. You can turn to your person, talk to you, and then share with each other. And then I think you all learned this, right? When I put my finger up, then we should continue, okay? Just share with each other for 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah, it looked like you were having fun. Sorry for stopping you, but we have a job to do. And this is a kind of conversation. We will get back in a few minutes about the importance of having this conversation, the importance of these stories. Right? I'm going to get to this in a while. But, telling this kind of things are the one that gives an idea of what culture is around here. Right? Not having, I mean, these are important, but not enough. So let's talk about a little bit about why culture is important. And why is it even more important in a time of disruptive changes like we are living right now? Right? I'm going to show you a little bit about this. This is called the results pyramid. So I'm going to tell a little bit about what this is all about. So let's say that every company has a vision, right? So every company has a place where they want to be in a certain number of years. And in order to achieve that vision, you probably, or your management, have probably set up some goals, right? In the form of KPIs, or now it's this OKRs is really like a hype again. But, whether or not you achieve these goals and whether or not you achieve the vision, it's actually a consequence of the results that each and every person achieve every single day, right? But where does this result come from? They result from the action. They are a consequence of the actions that everyone is doing. And you see, this is a pyramid. So there will be some of the actions that are probably not contributing to any result. You might think about waste, right? So there are things that we do. Maybe there's internally generated bureaucracy stuff that we do that are not directly connected to result. But that's not, the end of the story. So our action are depending on our beliefs. So what we do depends on what we believe is right or wrong. And the way we transfer our beliefs into action is by taking decision, by making decision every single day. We make decision, I don't know how many, like 1,000 of decisions each of us takes every single day, both in our private and work life. But where are these beliefs coming from? They are coming from the experience that we lived through our life. Because our brain is a connecting machine. So all experience we have lived since our childhood have created some patterns through which we look at the reality, right? And through these lenses, we come to judge, okay, what is right and what is wrong, and based on that, we take decision and do some action and so on and so forth. So now, how traditional companies have been operating for decades is about basically having a limited number of people, the so-called managers, having the task to manage people actions. If you think about whatever is in a traditional company, like individual performance management, role description, processes, tools, all these are built with the ultimate goal to manage people action, to make sure that, those actions are aligned with some, bringing some results that are aligned with some goals, okay? So this is all good. This was successful until, the environment was stable. But what happens if everything is changing around us? What happens if our company 5 or 10 years vision change every 6 months? Have you seen that? Right? So how can you imagine that a limited number of people can control the behavior of everyone? So what we know, what we learned also from, Scrum and other things, like we need to delegate responsibility. We need to make sure that people that are closer to the problem have the authority to take decision. That's all good, but there's a fundamental flaw that, how we can make sure that the decision that everyone is taking distributed in the organization are going towards the same vision. Because we might do things that are going in totally different direction. So that's why we need to work on the lower part of the pyramid. So working on creating certain experience in the company, certain in the experience for individual teams and the whole organization to shape coherent beliefs so that even though people are taking different decisions, we have a certain probability that they are coherently bringing everyone to the same kind of result or what we want as a business result. And this is what we call culture. So this is even more important in this time of disruption, right? And another thing is that everyone believes that we should have that kind of culture, but actually there is no ideal culture, right? I mean, we all know that in order to Scrum to work well, I mean, you should have a culture of collaboration or focus on respect or all these kind of things. But this is not like an absolute truth for every context, right? I want to show you this. I mean, probably you have seen this many times. This is the bell curve of innovation adoption, right? As modified by Geoffrey Moore, which in the book Crossing the Chasm, realized that actually, there is at a certain point a chasm. So if you are operating in a market that is on the left side of the chasm, you need to operate in a certain way. If you are operating on the other side, you need to have a different strategy. And to summarize the strategy, one is sell to make. So if you are on the early adopters, innovators, basically you are selling your idea to get the funding to build the actual product. So you will probably find users that are happy to collaborate with you and giving you feedback and so on. If you're working on the other side, you are moving more and more to an efficiency-based market. Like in the early majority, you have people that want a lot of features, and after the market has reached 50% penetration, you are going to the late majority, and there is the price that counts. You are going into more a commodity market, so people just assume that the product works well, and they want just to buy at a lower price. So you can imagine that one thing is you are focusing on collaborating and iterating with the customer, and another thing is you are working in a late majority market where your focus is cost efficiency. You might imagine that, you might need a slightly different culture to be operating in these different worlds. So there is no right or wrong culture. The term we use is that there is only a culture that is coherent or incoherent with your business situation or your business goal. That's what counts, okay? And then I get to these things that Fred says, like, sorry if I'm like, you were hoping to get some kind of recipe. But actually, if your goal is to, design what could be your ideal culture up front and make a gap analysis and make a plan to changes, that's never going to happen. And I talk to these HR leaders about, okay, we have this cultural transformation program. So how are we going to do that? Well, we did an assessment, then we did a gap analysis, and now we're doing a program, and we have like 10 program managers that are taking care of different parts. Not going to happen. And why? Because of this, what this framework teaches us. This is the Canadian framework. Who has never heard about Canadian before? Okay. Most of you know. But those of you who don't know, this is kind of a sense-making framework. So it's a kind of, giving you a way to make sense of the reality around you. So you go from a clear domain where, you have problems that are crystal clear to everyone, to the complicated domain where the connection between cause and effect, it's not obvious, but requires competency to be understood. And then the complex domain where the relationship between cause and effect can only be seen in retrospective, and you have a lot of unknowns. And then the chaotic domains, basically when you have emergency situation. Then you have the confused domain where you can really make sense of what the situation is, right? And why do you think the problem of influencing and changing a company culture, for those of you who know the framework, where do you think it stands? In which domain it belongs to? Any idea or any bet?
Can you repeat the question?
So if you think about the problem of changing your company culture or influencing a company culture, which kind of problem it is? In which domain is this problem? It's in a complex domain. And I'm going to prove you, right? Because I have some heuristic about how you can get an understanding whether your problem is in the complex domain or is mostly in the complex domain. I have 3 heuristics I'm going to teach you. First question is that, do we know exactly what to do? If your answer is no, most probably it's going to be a complex problem. Second question, do we know exactly, how to implement this? So the first is what, the second is how. If the answer is no, most probably this is going to be in a complex domain. Third question, are people involved? If the answer is yes, it's most probably a complex domain. And I'm sure you why, because, people are inherently complex. So I'm going to test this with you. Raise your hand if ever in your life you said something to someone else with the best of your intention and you get in return some reaction that you did not expect. Raise your hand. You see? This is a proof, like we are inherently complex. I'm not going to go more with this. So this is most probably, and therefore if it's a complex problem, the only way to address is not with a plan, but with sense, probe, response. So actually, when they say we can influence our culture by using complexity science, meaning like complexity management technique, meaning techniques that work well for complex problems. And I'm going to go through 4 of these, just to give you an idea. Distributed cognition, distributed change agency, Victor theory of change, and nudging. So, first of all, what do we teach to Scrum Masters and coaches? That, the first step to, face any challenge is visualizing what the situation is. Like, I normally tell to the Scrum Master I coach, if you don't know what to do, just make things visible, right? And then it will fun. So the first thing is to make your culture visible. And I'm getting back here to what Peter showed this morning, like the competing values framework, because this is the same framework we use. And why we use this? Because this is, in our judgment, as my company, Agile 42, and me personally, that this is the culture framework among dozens available that is the most backed up from research. Because the research from this started in the 70s, right? And then evolved, and the model was created more in the 90s. And basically, you have this idea about having 4 different culture gems. I'm not going to explain this because Pete did this already this morning. But actually, the point is that, no company has a culture that is just in one of these gems, culture gems. That's how Cameron and Quinn call it. But it's usually a combination of those. You might be more skewed into one or another, but you have usually a combination of that. So visualizing where you are is the first step. Because when you're facing a complex problem, understanding where you are is far, far, far more important than deciding where you want to be. Just you have to trust me with these things, but it is like this. So how we visualize this? This book, from Cameron and Quinn, which is Diagnosing and Changing Culture with Competing Values Framework, also has an assessment tool which is called OCAI, which means Organization Culture Assessment Instrument, which of course was very good and very useful in the 90s, but it's basically a questionnaire. And as good as it is for education, I use it in my classes sometimes, but the second time you're using it, you're already spoiled. Right? As any questionnaire, it's very easy to be biased. It's very easy to understand what is the expected answer you want to be, and there's a lot of possible gaming you can do around this. So for this reason, we have developed something different, right? You don't have to go here. You have the material. You can, go to this site and play around with it. But this is something that is based on sense-making technology, which is a technology developed by Dave Snowden and Cognitive Edge. Basically, it's about making sure that you have sort of a network of sensors in the organization. Starting from the understanding that, as we said before, the culture is not in the values you put on the wall, but the culture is in the stories that people tell each other, even at the coffee machines. So we try to intercept those stories. Right? And through some technology, ask people to make sense of those stories from their perspective, right? And then based on this, you got some kind of diagram. And the competing values framework is based on 4 different dimensions, 4 different parameters. And actually you are able to have a heat map of the different, 4 different parameters: leadership, behavior, orientation to work, theory of effectiveness, and value drivers and motivation. And the most important thing is that, differently from any survey, right, it's not about you ask people to do a survey and then there is someone that centrally is going to interpret this data and make some wonderful report. No, you have these graphs that are available to everyone, because we want to have distributed cognition but also distributed change agency. So giving people the authority and the agency through understanding some patterns and data to decide what they can do in their small area to impact and influence this. Because in complex problems there will be much more impact, since there are no linear system. There might be much more impact by small activities done on a local level than grandiose plan done centrally. And you can see, you can also zoom on the different dots and look at some, actual stories. So distributed cognition and distributed change agency are really key, right, where you're working with complex human system and complex challenges. And then the third thing is about, okay, how we're going to influence this, right? As I said, the traditional gap analysis is flawed when you're working with this kind of problem, because, what is true today is going to be not true anymore like tomorrow. So instead of deciding, what is your ideal culture, you have to get an understanding about what direction is, and then based on this understanding and based on where you stand, you can decide, okay, what is some other place, what is the next addition possible place to be that it's not really where we would like to be, but close enough to where we are to make this step, reasonable to take. And then understanding this, for example, these are data for a real company, you can decide, okay, what can we do to have less stories like the one we wouldn't like to have? What is this? How can we have less, oops, I messed up. What can we do to have less stories about the one that we don't want to have and more stories like the one we have? And, behind this competing values framework, you will discover that, among these 4 parameters, not surprisingly enough, there is only one that you can affect. That is the leadership behaviors. And the rest is influencing each other. So by, leaders, showing and adjusting their behaviors, you might have different stories of success and failure, and based on that, people believe in that, okay, there are possible other ways to be effective, and then in the end, this is possibly going to change their value drivers. So because, you can't change people's value system, right? You can only, adjust the environment to influence that. And, leaders are an important part of people's environment. So by changing their behaviors, they can adjust or can influence the others. So not being changed, but discussing, okay, we are now, so what is like a reasonable place to be, and what can we do to have less stories about the one that we don't want to have anymore, and more stories about the one that are more signaling the culture we want to have. And then you start nudging in the different directions. It's not enough just to say we're changing our behaviors, but there are a few levers that you can use. For example, like attractors. Basically, the whole thing is about, okay, what can we do to make the right things, to make it easy to do the right things in the right way? And what can we do to make the wrong things hard to do? So that's all about this. I make an example about these attractors, about, okay, in a company I worked, they want to use Scrum, but still, the individual performance management was very much individual-based. So the question about why these people should collaborate with each other if they are measured and rewarded on their individual goals. So what we did was adjusting this performance management system to make it more, let's say, profitable for people, for example, to help each other. So we moved from an individual-based goal to team-based and organization-based target, where people still have some individual goals, but the only goals they have were about how much have you learned in the last 6 months and how much have you helped others in the last 6 months. So making, again, easy and attractive for people to do the right things in the right way, and maybe disincentivize doing the wrong things in the right way. These are other examples of things we can do. And it's all about creating new experience, right? And here you can find some example of some experience you want to make. This is okay, let's assume that we want to create a new hiring process for Scrum Masters. And you might want to experiment in different ways. And depending on where we would like to try, you might try different things. Of course, depending on what you try, this might lead you in one direction more than another. And in the end, again, I don't want to go to, like Mother Teresa about be the change you want to see in the world. But, that seems a bit extreme, but it's not too far from the reality, right? I will probably tell this again tomorrow, like, you can't change people. Sorry for that. I mean, you can barely change the person you see in the mirror every day, right? And this is already hardly enough. And it requires, as Pete said this morning, like focus and commitment and so on. But this is the only things you can play. So by acting on yourself as a leader, wherever you are in the organization, that's the best way you can do to influence your organization. Because if we wait for the CEO to create this or someone else to come up with a plan on getting a much better culture so that our Scrum teams are thriving, sorry, this is not going to happen. This is just going to happen with you doing something. And we don't have any other chance, any other option than leading from wherever we are in our organization. Whether you are a Scrum Master, Product Owner, Developer, you can lead. And by that, you can actually have an impact on what people believe works in our workplace, and in the end, change the stories about how we do things around here. It's going to change the value system on the people in your company. So I wanted to give you some space about, what did you learn? Maybe you can reflect at home, because I would like to ask you a favor, and in return, I give you something in return. It's about, like, if you click on this QR code, I know they're going to collect feedback, but I would enjoy if you give me a direct feedback on this talk. You're going to answer a few questions, and at the end, you're going to get as a sort of a prize, like an example of a report you can download from this org scan, organization scan. So you can have an idea. This is a real report from a real company that, of course, has been anonymized. But you get an understanding about how many things you could like to get to give you some kind of sense, to help you making sense of such a seemingly fluffy, high-level things about culture, and what are some guidance you can get in what are the things that you can do to influence it and to get more stories about the one you would like to see in your organization and less stories about the one that you wouldn't like to see in your organization. And, everyone used to say that everything starts from leadership. Peter Drucker used to say that, the bottlenecks are always at the top of the bottle. But, we can see there are some evidence from science that everything starts from leadership. And actually, Edgar Schein reminds you that culture and leadership are just two sides of the same coin. And tomorrow I'm going to explore the other side of the coin. So if you would like to listen, come here at 2:40. We're going to talk about the other side of the coin. With that, I thank you very much, and hope we stay in touch.
Thank